Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, so in this video, I'd like to talk about the recent case of Christina Revels-Glick. Okay, this is a 34, 35-year-old real estate agent from Savannah, Georgia. Okay, and there has been a recent viral body cam video. Okay, a body cam video from Tybee Beach near Savannah, Georgia, where Miss Revels-Glick was basically arrested for using a sex toy on the beach.
Yeah, can I ask what the problem is? All right, so someone called us. We got multiple calls about you. Were you doing something you weren't supposed to be doing? Okay. What did I do? What did I do? So apparently you're masturbating on the beach. Who saw that? Is there anything in the bag? No. Is it right if I look through it? I mean, if you can open it and can I see the contents inside the bag? Yes. Okay. I don't really understand what y'all are. We're just here because someone called and we're very concerned. Okay. This is really highly offensive to me. I'm trying to figure it out. It's my vibrator, but I just put it in my. I was sitting on the beach. So you did have a vibrator. Listen, I was sitting on the water like this, and I just put it in there, and it was covered up, and I just had an orgasm. I'm sorry, I was stressed out. Right? Nobody saw it. Man, please don't do this to me. Are you serious? A family saw it. They had kids. What? There was nobody around me.
So it's easy to see why this video went viral, because Christina in this video, I mean, she's being remarkably honest. Okay, she's really not being deceptive, really. And it just seems, I don't know, I guess at least I'm left with the feeling that justice can be really harsh, and that she's just carried off in handcuffs. It just, I don't know, like, even if there was a family that did see her masturbating on the beach, I mean, at the same time, something in me, maybe it's just my sense of justice. I just felt like something seemed a little bit disproportionate. And also, like, I think there's also the guilt that we feel, watching these YouTube videos. I think even I felt a little bit guilty watching this, because it's like, she didn't seem like really that bad of a person. And I don't know, it just seemed like, we as a public, because we now have access to all this body cam footage, it's almost like a sense of guilt, for getting into her personal space. And, and then you have to think, like, gosh, how, people can be really humiliated. People can be really humiliated by this type of incident. So it really surprised me, as I kind of looked around for comments on the internet, how a lot of people were really upset at this person, really upset at Christina Revels-Glick. They were really upset at her, saying that, hey, if this was a man, like masturbating and ejaculating in public, if it was a man, he would just be thrown in jail and, basically, treated very severely, and rightly so, right? And I kind of started thinking about that, and I thought, well, yeah, I mean, I guess that is kind of true. I guess a man can't really get away with that, but I guess still, I sort of feel, sort of torn, because maybe it's true that men and women aren't exactly the same, but even if the law is going to treat men and women exactly the same, just so we can say we're being perfectly fair, okay, even if we're going to treat men and women exactly the same, it still bothers me how humiliating this sort of situation can be. Okay, and I think that, um, I think too easily we get into these, like, scenarios in our mind where we imagine some man just, flagrantly masturbating. But in real life, real life situations are not always as cartoonish as what we imagine. Okay, and in this case, I do think that that Christina was really humiliated. Okay, I think she was really humiliated, and then this is the big shocker. It turns out that just months after this incident, she ended up dying, apparently by unaliving herself. Okay, I'm not going to say the S word, but basically she unalived herself. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who have a lot of suspicion about the way she died, but I looked at the autopsy report, and basically, it is strange, because normally when someone shoots themselves in the head, they usually just drop immediately. Okay. But it looks like, according to the autopsy report, she was shot at an angle under her chin, where another person killing her, I don't think it seems realistic that they would position the gun so accurately under her chin like that, without getting some resistance from her. So it looks like she probably was like, say, she was probably kind of flirting with the idea of unaliving herself, and maybe the gun just went off, or maybe she wanted to shoot and then she just didn't die right away because the bullet went like through the very front of her head. And so you can stay alive like that for a short amount of time, right? A lot of people think that's what happened with Travis Alexander with Jodi Arias, that she meant to shoot him in the head, but she only shot him like in the very frontal part of the head, and so he was able to still put up some kind of fight, or whatever. I mean, you can argue about that, but um, I think there are ways to explain the actual scene of Christina's where she died in her apartment. There's ways to explain it where it really was an act of self-inflicted gunshot wound. But I do know there's a lot of, it's a little bit of controversy about that. But the bottom line is, if we can just assume for the sake of argument that she ended up killing herself, just months after this incident, okay, I think, and even though she did have other problems in her life, like, I'm not going to say that the only thing that caused her to commit suicide was this. And also, I don't think this body cam was viral at the time that she ended her life, right? But if we can just assume, for the sake of argument, that she did take her life, okay, um, I don't think that this incident I don't think that this incident was nothing to her. Okay, I think this was maybe part of maybe the overall picture of why she wasn't happy. And so, it does make me think carefully about whether we have, let's say, the best policies in place about how police should maybe deal with this kind of problem. And here I'm reminded of kind of a similar incident. This is an incident involving one of my favorite actors, a comedy actor named Fred Willard.
You know what they say about blind prostitutes? You really have to hand it to them. We can cut that out. I don't know.
Where he was prosecuted, actually. He was prosecuted for masturbating in a porno theater in Hollywood. Okay, this is back in 2012. And he ended up losing an important contract with PBS. Okay, he was I guess he was doing the voiceover, or he was like a presenter for like some kind of documentary on PBS, and basically he was fired, essentially. So it wasn't just the misdemeanor prosecution and the humiliation, of just the criminal proceeding, but also the impact it had on his life, and I think his family as well. So this is pretty serious stuff. And also, we can't forget the recent incident with Jeffrey Toobin.
New Yorker suspends Jeffrey Toobin for masturbating on a Zoom call. It was unclear how much each person saw of what occurred, but both said that they saw Toobin jerking off. It seems you never want to diagnose. It seems like this guy has an issue. If you can't get through like a work call without having to switch over to your like video sex chat.
And in both the case of Fred Willard and in the case of Jeffrey Toobin, in both of these cases, I mean, we can probably agree these people probably have some personal issues, right? We can probably agree these aren't perfect people, right? But at the same time, Jeffrey Toobin, he wasn't doing this like in a place where he'd be like traumatizing like children. This was just a professional Zoom call. I'm sure everybody on the Zoom call knew that something went wrong, that it wasn't intentional. I'm sure anybody could guess that he just had trouble maybe managing the different screens as he was having some kind of sex chat while he's also at work. I mean, the thing is embarrassing, but the bottom line is that Jeffrey Toobin wasn't harming children, and it wasn't a situation that I think demanded like the worst condemnation, right? Likewise, Fred Willard, he's in a porno theater, and so I think we can all ask ourselves whether sometimes, if we're not careful how these things are done, how the actual shame and humiliation can sometimes be, I think, a little over the top compared to the actual circumstances.
Well, I have to say, like, I wanted to try to cut him some slack on this one. I really did, because I feel like the shame of this and the public humiliation is so unbelievably intense.
And so I guess I'm just left with a feeling of being kind of uncomfortable with this whole thing. Okay, I'm uncomfortable with this whole thing. Okay, I know that Christina Revels-Glick, I understand she had a lot of personal issues. Okay, I understand she was not a perfect person. She was probably an alcoholic. apparently she had a lot of problems with the law prior to this incident. Okay, I think she had even done a little prison time, and so she had a lot of personal issues. Okay, so we're not dealing with a perfect person, but there's still something that tells me that something just strikes me as really indecent, more indecent than the masturbation. Okay, is just the insensitivity of the police, I think. And maybe the fact that maybe we don't have more policies, more salient policies, so that when we have issues where somebody is just kind of discreetly masturbating, especially a woman, okay, because when a woman masturbates, it's not so flagrant and not so visible as when a man masturbates. I'm sorry, that's just a fact, okay. And so that, when you have somebody doing something that's, relatively discreet, obviously with no bad intentions, that, maybe the police ought to have a very strict policy about allowing, like, maybe a warning, giving a warning before, and then the person would have to reoffend before you would actually issue them a ticket, assuming that nobody is like gravely, injured by this incident. I mean, where you could give the police like discretion, to sort of have wide latitude, to really just use their personal judgment and just issue warnings in situations like this, to also weigh in the balance, the actual humiliation of something like this. Okay, I think I don't think we need to have such a hard on as Americans that we need to just try to go after every single person who commits a little sexual indiscretion in public, or by accident is seen by some family or whatever. I think especially in the case of a woman, where the masturbatory act is going to be probably a little more discreet than if a man had done it. I'm sorry if anybody's offended by that, but at the very least, just to have some realism about sort of like the nuances of different sex crimes. And not every sex crime is a grave, a high crime and misdemeanor, like serious sex crimes. Some sex crimes are, kind of modest, and maybe even kind of like mild. They're not really that serious. So in a strange way, this case of CHRISTINA REVELS-GLICK, this unfortunate case, okay, where she was humiliated and she did end up killing herself. I mean, we can argue whether this was the only reason why she killed herself, but she did end up killing herself. This case does kind of remind us of an important issue, okay? That maybe the American criminal legal system, as applied to sex crimes, may be a little bit insensitive to, I think, the nuances of the whole spectrum of sex crime. That some sex crimes really are relatively minor, okay? And I think, especially in the case where you have, like, say, these like female high school teachers that end up having these affairs with high school students. I think this is a perfect example, because we end up putting them on like a sex offender registry and threatening them with like the worst penalties. But in reality, I think even the court system understands that these are serious crimes, of course, but just because it is women, and I'm sorry, everybody's going to get angry at me, but the fact is, do we really want to say that the trauma to the average 16 or 17-year-old boy, that trauma is exactly the same as the trauma that would be, let's say, to a teenage girl if some 40-year-old teacher is like raping her? You know what I mean? Usually, and I'm sorry to say this, but I've actually worked on these cases because I do work in criminal defense. But usually, when you have the female teacher with a, like, say, a teenage student, these are largely consensual relationships. Okay, that's just a big secret, right? These are largely consensual relationships. So if you really want to put that on the same level of severity as, like, say, some high school teacher that's actually like forcibly raping a teenage girl, or like coercing or manipulating her, really, and because generally when it's male on female, it's usually not as consensual, right? In these like high school situations. So, do we really want to be so blindly equal, where we're actually like forgetting the different nuances of the actual severity of these incidents? And should we not maybe be more open as Americans to really appreciating that, not every sex crime is a red hot, 10 out of 10 serious, right? There is like a gradation, especially, I think, honestly, when women are involved. I'm sorry if that's offensive to anybody. And I just want to show you guys one little clip here where this is an example of a woman who, when she was 19 years old, okay, and she even looks like she's much younger than 19, but when she was 19 years old and she looked like a 14-year-old herself, she ended up having a sex with a 14-year-old boy, consensual, okay, and she ended up getting put on a sex offender registry so that she could no longer go to a public park with her children, okay. And again, her crime was as a 19-year-old, she slept with a 14-year-old. Okay, I'm not saying that was good. What she did was not good. But does that mean that now she can't go to a public park? Like what is she, like a danger to the public? You know. So check this out.
Good. My daughter, I mean, she doesn't know what I did, but she knows that I did something I shouldn't have. When I was a teenager, it was my birthday, and decided to kind of have like a little party together, and we were drinking, dancing, and doing things like that. And then it ended up that the underage male and I slept together. He put his arms around me and he was like, well, I just don't want you to think I'm taking advantage of you while you're drunk. And I was like, I don't think that. I got a call from an investigator and they said they wanted to talk to me and ask me some questions. And I went, and she said if I was honest, I wouldn't get thrown in jail. I was basically told, if we go to trial, you will get 20 to 25 years for this if they find you guilty. If you take a plea, minimal time, lifetime registry, lifetime probation. I am defined under the registry when you look me up, child molestation. Actually a level 3, which is the worst of the worst. This is the last time that I'm going to be able to take you and your brother to the park. I'm sorry.
So I know there's no easy answer to all this, okay? I understand there's no easy answer to all this, but I still feel uncomfortable. I still think that in the United States, I think we could do a little better at allowing more nuance into the way that we categorize and address different levels of sex crime, okay? Obviously, let me be honest, okay? All sex crime is serious, okay? All sex crime is serious, all right? But there are still levels of seriousness, all right? And I think people in law enforcement, I think people in like law enforcement supervisors, like chiefs of police, and also like politicians, I think need to have a sensitivity that while every sex crime is serious, there are still different levels. And I think there are different like circumstances, right? And I think that police should be trained, and also like even like district attorneys, and courts. We should all sort of like be a little more enlightened, to sort of understand the different levels of seriousness, and not just to create these big categorical baskets where every masturbation is the same, or every affair between a student and a teacher. I mean, now let me say, anytime a teacher is abusing their trust as a teacher and having any kind of relationship with a student, that's terrible, right? But there are still different levels, okay? You cannot compare a consensual, even though it's totally inappropriate, totally illegal, you can't compare a consensual relationship between a 26-year-old teacher and a 15-year-old student as the same thing as a 40-year-old teacher, let's say, being more coercive and maybe even just forcibly having sex with a 15-year-old female, right? I mean, we can't put those on exactly the same level. Likewise, not every masturbation incident is the same, and not every party where a 19-year-old is, doing the wrong thing, right? Sleeping with a 14-year-old boy. But that shouldn't be the same as like some, like hardcore child molester, right? So that person can no longer go to a public park. So, I feel bad that Christina lost her life. I'm not going to say for sure that the incident at the beach, the masturbation incident, that was exactly the whole 100% reason why she took her life. But, just on the assumption that it had something to do with it, right? And also just the fact that there was something kind of indecent about how she was treated, I believe, okay, relative to the actual seriousness of whatever crime she committed. I think we as Americans should at least take this opportunity to consider the sex crimes while they're all serious. Okay, we ought to still allow some sense of like the gradations and the nuances, and maybe a little bit of flexibility at the margins where they're not so serious. Because after all, I think for justice to be just, it has to really fit the seriousness of whatever the offense is. So anyway, really appreciate your patience, and thanks for watching.